It made me think, what do you think your writing style has changed from the first book to the second book at all?
Yeah,
Oh.
most definitely. I think it's gotten a little bigger. I think a little bigger. I think with
Hmm. Hmm.
Her Infernal Name and Other Nightmares. There's a lot of world building going on in the second collection that leads into other things, more recent things that I've been writing and selling to other publications and stuff like that. A lot of the world building happens in people. Everything kind of takes place in that one town. This one, it gets a little bigger. It swells a little bit more. And then now the sandbox that I'm playing in is it's actually pretty wide. It sort of encompasses 3 towns that are in the same area. There's a reservation in the area. And obviously you read we're in New York City in this one a little bit as well. So I think going wider was probably a goal with this one.
I definitely see that now. So was The Nebulous They the first story you wrote for this collection, would you say?
Yeah, timeline was, The Nebulous They came hot on the heels of People, actually. I wrote The Nebulous They so People came out September of last year. I probably wrote The Nebulous They in October. And then I started working on the collection around that. And I sold one story in this collection to another outlet, and they published it. And then I started working on the novella itself.
So when you sell something to another publishing, you could still publish it yourself, right?
Yeah, because they only own it for a certain amount of time after they publish it.
Oh, really?
Usually that's the case. So, for example, I have personally one of my favorite stories that I've ever written is going to be published, I think, in March in an anthology that I was invited to contribute to, and it's a story that I really love and has a character that I adore in it, and they have it for, I think, a year after it's published. So March of 2021 is when it'll be published. I will be able to do something with it in March of 2022.
Oh, okay. Cool deal.
Yeah.
What was the most challenging story to write for this collection?
Apple Valley was probably the hardest one to write, because that's the only one that I didn't really plot out as I was writing it. Usually I'm not so it's like they either say, oh, you're either a pantser or you're a plotter. And I like to see myself as both, because even though I will take notes and I'll write down, these are things that I'd like to happen in a story or in a book or whatever, it's always very loosey-goosey. And usually I am sort of a pantser, but in that one it was pure pantser. And I didn't have any idea of where it was going to go. And the feedback I've gotten on it has been positive. It's my editor's favorite in the collection, which I thought was interesting. I didn't think he was going to like it at all, but it's his favorite. And some other reviews have been very kind to it as well.
A pantser, what, it's flying by the seat of your pants kind of thing? Is that
Yeah. That's exactly it, yeah. So I don't know. I straddle both worlds. I'm working on something now that is, I don't have it fully plotted out. However, I have about 20 or so beats that I'm going to hit throughout the whole narrative. And they naturally fall into either Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. So that's easy enough. But finding the placement of those beats is the tough part. And I don't have everything planned out. This is what happens here. This is what happens here. It's just the beats.
I had a question. Do you write a story idea first, or do you write characters, or does that change? Do you say, oh, I have an idea like this character is Royce. Am I going to make this a story around her, or I have a story idea that's going to be centered around a character who I'll name Royce?
I think usually it's the story first.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's both at the same time. Like with the title novella, the Her Infernal Name, that was definitely story first, and then Royce, and then Shoshana. That's kind of the order of how those elements emerged.
And speaking of that novella, how did you come up with that title, Her Infernal Name?
And this is something that upsets my editor a little bit, because he's not like super hardcore religious or whatever, but he is Catholic. And I did a lot of research into the infernal names and the demonology and ancient Goetic studies and the Lesser Key of Solomon and all of these things. I find that stuff so interesting, and I find the concepts of demonology and what's good and what's evil so fascinating, going back to like Babylonian times. I love that stuff. It almost sounds like Ghostbusters-y, like Gozer worshippers and stuff like that, but I just find it so cool. And so I started playing with the idea of what would a modern sort of Goetic tale be. And I had the elements of fear of missing out in my head, fear of personal economic instability, and the idea of the loss of innocence and the corruption of innocence. So I had those three concepts against the idea of sort of a Goetic tale. I don't know. It's kind of like lost my train of thought there. But
I definitely now understand those themes that you mentioned them, having read it, and you center around a young girl who's a YouTube star. And she just kind of does her own thing whenever she wants and drags Shoshana, the protagonist, into this wild world and whole economic thing, and without giving too much away. But yeah.
I think the biggest struggle with that particular story was I didn't want Royce to be not unlikable. I didn't want her to be unlikable because, like, we all know teenagers who are
obnoxious
like that. Yeah, and it's like you could obnoxious or whatever, you know, as a teacher, right? Like I see them every day. Like I see these kids every day, and it's not even so much that they can help it. They just don't know. They don't have like the framework to really interpret the world. So to them, there's how they see themselves, how they want everyone to see them, and how they really are. And I wanted Royce to be all three of those things all the time. I didn't want people to dislike her, but I don't want people to be like, she's like the coolest person ever. She's just a very flawed person.
Well, I think having Shoshana helps because she wants to be this kind of big sister to her, and at the same time, she's given Shoshana her shot at making some money and getting back on her feet, but dragging her into a very weird world, as you will see when you read this. I know I asked you about Royce before, but we won't reveal because there's a lot more to Royce than meets the eye.
It's funny. When I was writing that, I was worried about people who are very well versed in that world being mad at me. Very well versed in the idea of like the Goetic infernal names and stuff. I was in the back of my head. I was like, what if somebody reads this and they know more about what I'm writing about than I do? And what if they get mad about it? Like, what if I upset them? I was more upset about that, or more worried about that, than anything I've ever written upsetting anybody else.
But you did it anyway.
Yeah.
If there's backlash or not. You know, come on.
Yeah.
It's your story.
It's so funny, though, because like, some people get worried about offending women or offending children or offending whatever. I'm worried about offending Goetic worshippers. Gozer worshippers.
Well, you're the key master, so it's okay. In your book. You got another one that was stuck out was the Elevator of the Dead.
Yes.
That actually got my heart pounding. I mean, obviously, the title might explain something. I mean, of all the places to have like a zombie encounter, an elevator is probably one of the worst. Did you think of that while you were on an elevator once?
You know what's weird? I'm like naturally worried whenever I'm on an elevator. I don't like riding in elevators. They freak me out. I hate planes. Planes are the only thing planes are the only legitimate fear that I have anymore. I have no other fears. And I'm not saying that to be like, oh, I'm a tough guy. Like, there are things that I am afraid of. However, but a thing that we face normally is flying, right? But flying scares the hell out of me. So, yeah, I think I was thinking, like, what would be the worst possible place to run into a zombie apocalypse? And that would be in an elevator. And a friend of mine literally asked me, he was like, hey, can you write a zombie story? And I was like, maybe. So challenge accepted. And I wrote this one.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was
Thank
a little
you.
more gory, folks. But hey, it's a zombie story. What do you expect?
Yeah, gotta have a little gore.
Yeah. One that I really liked and I wanted more of was Support. That's a very wild universe there. It's like a support group for, was it ghosts? And yeah, that was like, ooh, I'm like, the story's over? No, man.
That was the second one that I wrote for this one.
Where did that idea come from?
I like to think sometimes about, and I was talking about this the other day too, the idea of if there are things that go bump in the night, right? Like if there are ghosts and other things and stuff, and if they can see each other and they can interact with each other, imagine how bored and lonely they might be. And they would need therapy in the same way that we all do. So I figured a rabbi in a Brooklyn basement would probably be a good person to listen to people, talk about their problems. So, especially when it comes to ghosts, I feel like ghosts are probably the most lonely of all creatures or ghouls or whatever you want to say, just because to me, so like, there's always that hard and fast rule, like, oh, how do you kill a vampire? Sunlight, garlic, stake through the heart, whatever. But, like, they don't exist, so you can kill them however the fuck you want. So, in the universe that I've created, to me, ghosts require a tremendous amount of energy to make themselves appear to us as people. It just seems to be that would be, like, the ultimate thing that they could do. So it's got to be exhausting to be a ghost by that definition, right? So I was thinking, well, if they got to go through all of that trouble just to show themselves to schmucks like me and you, why would they do it ever? We're just either going to be like, oh my God, and take our phone out, or we're going to run away. Or if you're the rabbi in the story, you might have a different reaction, as he does, to one of the ghosts in his group. So, I just imagine ghosts as being incredibly lonely, sad people because they were taken out of their time through, like, a murder or death, whatever. Natural death results in ghosts in my world also. And then it's just a terribly lonely existence, I think, to be a ghost in the Ottone universe.
Ottone literary universe.
That's right.
OLU.
That term.
Yeah. I want more of that. Next book.
Fine.
I want some more support for support.
I could bring the rabbi back.
L'chaim. All right. Yes.
That's actually the one story that was sold
Good.
before this was published, yeah.
I can see why. I like that one. Another one that stood out to me was Playing God. Was The Sims video game an influence?
Oh, big time.
That's what I'm feeling.
I
I actually looked to see if DigiLife was a real game.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Have you played The Sims?
It's been
The newer
long.
one?
No.
Oh, you played the original?
Yeah. I built my houses and created. I had a son. I went into the spooky area, that town. That was fun.
Yeah. It's such a great game, and I got way obsessed with it. Like right around, I guess it was probably Christmas time last year, and I was just playing it like crazy. I just couldn't stop. I would wake up like hours before my girlfriend would, and I'd be like, here we go. And I would fix up my mansion and Yeah, it was a real obsession. I haven't played it in forever, but yeah, that was